have a dream, oh, I have a dream. Red, white, and blue, fly free, fly free. I believe, oh, I believe. Will you dream with me?
Good morning, everyone out there. Welcome to Changing Times. It is a beautiful Wednesday, November the 8th, and I tell you what, we are glad to be at the Axe Media Group headquarters in Springfield, Missouri. This is show number 134. We just keep increasing them week by week, and I am Lynn Morris, and our special guest today, again, is Larry Ballard. And Larry, you wrote a book called Liberty Crusade. Mm-hmm. It's just a great, great book. I would recommend everyone, if you like this show, and I know this, you know what, last night when I was studying about this show and praying about this show, I actually thought to myself, 134 shows. I believe that this is the most important show that Don and I have ever done. Okay. And we've done some great shows. We've had tremendous guests, but what you're going to hear today, you must share this with all your family members, all your friends, all your coworkers, because your life depends on it. The existence of our country depends on it. And so you need to make sure that everybody sees this. So we're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and X and Twitter. But guess what? Guess what? You can see it on all kinds of other social media channels too. But just make sure that if you miss live, you watch it later on today or next week or whenever, because your life depends on it. So, Larry, you know, we've had you on the show before, and you're going to give some information today that's, I think, kind of scary and going to worry a lot of people. But our show is one about social issues and social causes, and then we try to have positive solutions. If you can't figure out a positive solution, you just want to argue with each other, then we're never going to make it, okay? And so tell the audience a little bit, because I know you got some really important slides, but where are you getting all this information?
Upstairs.
Upstairs, okay. And you had an accident one time, right?
I did. For those who haven't seen me before, I'll give you a little background, because I think you need it to give what I'm going to tell you a little bit of credibility. In 1968, when I was in college, I went on a motorcycle ride in the Ozark Mountains, and I had an accident. I went on a curve, and there was gravel and oil laid down, and I hit that, and the road curved to the right. I went straight over a cliff. My motorcycle arced up into the air and landed in a pine tree, of all things. I hit a tree and was knocked unconscious for 4 hours. I could feel my spirit leave my body, and I had an encounter with God. And God doesn't talk to you audibly. It's almost like you're getting a computer download. The amount of information that is disseminated is incredible. So I saw in that 4 hours everything from that moment in time till now and beyond. And when I told people what happened, initially they said, "You're crazy." And now people are calling me on the telephone all the time. What's happening? What's God telling you now? What's going on? Because he showed me then the decline and collapse of America, the situation that the world is in right now. We'd be on the brink of World War III. We would be on the brink of a total economic, global financial collapse. And what God said to me is, "Now you be patient, because the message I have for you is not for this time." Just like he said to Daniel, seal it up. It's not for this time. He says, "I will bring you out when we're on the precipice, when we are that close to financial collapse and total lockdown and a total communist dictatorship, because people will not be ready to hear what you have to say until they're at a point of desperation." So we're at a point of desperation. But the good news is God saw that all the way back in 68 and before, because why? God knows the end before the beginning. He has everything planned out to the most minute detail and the perfect timing. So what's happening is the financial elite, the global elite who control the world and control all the governments of the world through their quote unquote shadow governments, think that they're going to pull a financial reset that's going to take every nation in the world and bring them into their global one world communist dictatorship. It's going to fail. So Lynn said, We need good news. So bear with me in the beginning. It's going to sound a little dark, but then you're going to find out that if we understand what the enemy's doing, he's already lost. So let's get into this.
Yeah, let's pay attention because this is extremely important.
All right, so if I can get my computer to work. So if you can see that screen, that's what's coming, guys. It's just right out of the Bible when the lion and the lamb set together and we have peace and harmony in the world because their reset is going to fail. So if I am nothing else, God has made me a strategist. What he said is, you will study history. You will study the Bible. You will study anthropology, geology, climatology, history, political science, global affairs. And I'm going to just pour knowledge into you and give you a unique memory where you almost have a photographic memory so you can remember thousands of details. So with that in mind, I consider myself a strategist, and I get my cues for how to work my strategy from, I believe, the most famous strategist in the world, Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War. And if you haven't read it, it's one of the best books in the world to read. You can use it. You can use that strategy in your personal life and in your business life. It's amazing. So what does he say about the moment in time that we're in right now? He says, if you know your enemy and yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battles. Now, why is he saying that? Well, I've couched a term for it. I call it anticipatory thinking. What I do and how I reach the conclusions that you're going to see here today is I sit down in a chair and I meditate and I talk to God and I say, God, I want you to put me in the tent of the enemy. I want to be that enemy and see the world through his eyes. Then I want to see it through my eyes. And then I want to analyze where I'm at, where he's at, and figure out where we need to go based on knowing both ends of the spectrum. So that's what we're going to be doing today, folks. So here's what it is. Let's just say you're a football fan and you're rooting for some team, but the odds makers say, oh, they're going to lose. And all the betting is against them. Well, if you were a coach and you were a little unethical and you were the one on the losing side of the betting, if somebody would come to you and say, hey, we got the playbook for the enemy, if you were unethical enough to use it, there's a pretty good chance an inferior team could defeat a superior team because they'd know all the plays they were going to call. That's where we're at, folks. I'm about to reveal to you the enemy's playbook in absolute detail so that we can anticipate what he's going to do. We can prepare our response, and we can take him to checkmate instead of him taking us to checkmate. Now, here's something that I guarantee you almost nobody has figured out. It's so simple, but they don't stop to do what I said a minute ago. They don't see this through the eyes of the enemy and through our eyes and are able to do the analysis. Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that in politics, nothing, absolutely nothing happens by accident. If it happened, you can bet it was planned that way. So we have 4 critical turning points in the world, and people just think, well, they just happened. They didn't happen. They were planned. And then you have to understand why were they planned. So we're in a war that's been going on ever since America was founded, and it's broken down into 4 consistent points. And we need to understand what those points are and how they play into the enemy's playbook. So the first one was to make Britain and the European monarchies rule the world. Why? There's a reason why. So they could grab all of the land. So the British Empire and the monarchs of Europe own probably more than 75% of all the land on planet Earth. That was phase 1. That gave them the power of the land. And the land has something very important. It contains all of God's natural resources, which is the basis of all money and all power. So that meant that they had all the world's natural resources. They then could turn that into manufactured goods in sweatshops, and then they could ship that around the world because they controlled the ocean, turn that into an unlimited amount of money through a central banking system. And guess what they could do? They could buy power and influence at every stratum of the world. They could control our politicians, just literally buy them. They could control the media, buy them. They could control our education system, buy them. Basically what they call today the 7 spheres of influence. That's how they control us. That constitutes their shadow government. Then we move into phase 2. And it wasn't any accident that America then twilighted Britain and became the world's superpower. There was a reason for that. They had the land, now they needed something else. They wanted a police force to enforce their policies. So what did America become? The police force of the world. to do what? To enforce policies. And how did we do it? We had a Navy that was global, worldwide, ports all over the world. And so we could come and sweep in and do whatever we needed to do, and we could control policy. But we could do something else. We were the head of the banking system because we were the world's reserve currency. So the key word here is policy. So anybody who didn't agree with American policy, we could force them into coercion through military, but we could also use the monetary system and say, if you don't do what we want you to do, we're going to freeze your assets. We're not going to let you use SWIFT. You can't transact money internationally, and that just dries up a nation. So that's number two. That's where we were. Then they moved into, oh my God, why would they want to collapse America and raise up China, a communist nation? Well, there's a reason for that too, folks, and we need to understand it. They wanted to have the ingenuity of American capitalism, but they wanted the control of communism. So what they wanted to create was a super capitalist economy with all of the horsepower of the American economy, but all of the control of communism. That's why they have been pushing America down and raising China up. They're getting levels and levels and levels of more and more control. They control the land, they control the seas, they control the policies, they control the supply chain. And then we move into where we are today, the final phase. Whoever wins this next move, it's checkmate, folks. So this show is going on because we need to wake the people up so that checkmate is in our favor, not the enemy's favor. So what's the close? What's the precipice that we're on? They want to collapse the U.S., China, and that would collapse the entire global monetary system of the world. And when they want to create chaos. Why? Because out of chaos becomes order. That's their checkmate. If they can put us in a position where the global financial system is dried up, where they've dried up the supply chain, where people are panicked because they can't buy food, they can't get water, they can't pay their electric bill, they can't pay their mortgage, they can't buy their food. Now they come to us and we're in desperation and they say, just like they did with every central bank they ever installed, they collapsed those nations through a war and they said, we'll fix it. All you got to do is just give us our central banking system. So they're going to come to us this time, this is their plan, and say, all that chaos, all that suffering, we can fix it in a heartbeat. All you got to do is just give us our one world government and we'll fix everything. Well, folks, we can't do that. That means we've lost the war. So we have to wake up and we have to understand that on that, we have to say no, and we have to come together and we have to unite. One last piece, and then we're going to get into some real analysis. So basically, this is the plan to basically create their reset. They use COVID to do what? To collapse China, because the supply chain dropped, and now manufacturing is leaving China by the droves, going to deglobalization. Well, wait a minute. Why all of a sudden would they want to go to deglobalization? Well, let's go to the Bible. The Bible tells us exactly why they want to do that, because their ultimate game is, once they've got all those other avenues of control, is they want to set up a 10-nation beast system. And it's right in the book of Revelations, in Revelation 17:12. It says, there shall come a time when there shall be 10 kings, upon whose heads crowns shall not be placed, but for 1 hour with the Antichrist. Then you jump over to the UN, which God sent me to, and they happen to give us this little document that says, hey, here's our plan. Here's our bottom line. We want to end the sovereignty of every nation in the world and create what? A 10-nation servile, meaning their constitutions have been taken away, trading bloc. The first one exists. It's the EU. They tried to get America and form something called the Amero Union, but their plans leaked out and they got failed. But I have on another presentation I do all 10 of the trading blocks that they want to initiate and the nations that would belong into them. So it's real, folks. That's what they want to do. That's where we're at right now. And the second piece of how they're implementing that is BRICS. So that's used to collapse the US dollar and take the control of the dollar as the world's reserve currency away from us. And what's that do? That causes their global collapse. So if we're asleep and we agree to what they ask us to do, we've lost. Checkmate, we lose. But if we've got their playbook, then we know how to counter what they're doing, and basically we come out as the winners. So now I'm going to go into something that I need to explain. This presentation, is part of a 2.5-hour presentation. I had to cull this down a lot to get this in 45 minutes. So I'm going to go through 2 slides that I'm going to read very quickly. Now, in the longer presentation, we go into detail on each one of these bullet points. But just think for a second as I read them. These are the control mechanisms that are the objectives in their playbook. And if we go into this longer presentation, it'll tell you how to counter each one of these. So here's what they want to do. Install a shadow government. Check, they've done that. Create a central banking system. There's only one major nation in the world that doesn't have a central bank, and that's Russia. And that's why we're in a war with Russia right now. They want to take away our property. They want to, I'm sorry, I'm screwed up. They want federal income tax in order to basically put us in debt. And they want property tax to take away our ability to own land. They have terrorist attacks to have an excuse to pass draconian laws that effectively allow them to implement a legal dictatorship. They have open borders. That's a war, folks. That's a war of incursion. Terrorists pouring into this country to be activated whenever they want to activate them. They've got a drug epidemic. Well, they used that before. Twice they inflicted China with drugs, and China had to fight a war to get out from under what that did to their nation socially. They want to control the money. So they do that by setting up the central banking system. They orchestrate boom-bust cycles by basically controlling the money. They can put more money out in the market. They can lower the interest rates. They can drive us into an investment, and then all of a sudden they can pop the market, because that's all going to be taken away from them as we go to this new system, as we win. They inflicted us with usury, which is the Bible tells us you shouldn't have that. And we had every state in the country had a usury law except 6. Well, they found a way around it. They just went to those 6 states and they incorporated, and that allowed them to inflict us with credit cards that charges 18, 20, whatever percent interest rates they want to charge. Then they took us into intentionally losing trade. That was how they took the power away from the United States and shifted it to China. And then they want, this is their end game, to commit global genocide. And their excuse for that is they're saying, oh, well, we don't have enough resources. For the sake of resource sustainability, we have to reduce population. Well, they don't want to just reduce it naturally. That's where we got COVID. They have all kinds of things that they're doing that allow them to hopefully kill 7 billion people. And then they want to interrupt the supply chain. I'm going to try to go through faster. Then Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 is the confirmation that they do want to kill 7 million of us. And then the false narrative of climate change is designed to allow them to tax us into absolute servitude. They want to end, and then we're in a corporate charter. We have to end that. So they implemented that corporate charter in order to take our Constitution away from us and put us under a corporation. And a corporation doesn't serve we the people. A corporation only has one single objective: serve the financial interest of the shareholders. So ever since 1871, we have been under a corporation that in no way, shape, or form represented we the people of this nation. I'm going to skip these. There's too many. You see the slides.
Right.
Go back and read them yourself, folks. So now I'm going to pull up some slides that I think will be graphic. You see a truck headed for Chicago. What you see on it are probably thousands of plastic coffins. There are depositories in America and China, all over the world. And that's how they're going to dispose of the 7 billion people when they kill us. They can't just leave us rotting in the streets. That causes disease. So just burn that image into your mind. And then here's where we start to win, folks. They have kept us divided. They control the media. They control entertainment. They control the education system. They control everything that comes into our brain that determines our definition of what reality is. We have to wake up and understand that they have intentionally divided us and pit us against one another. They use racial problems, ethnic, religious, economic, sexual orientation, all those things to divide us and to keep us tearing each other apart. They want to create chaos, because if we're focused on all of those other things, we can't see what they're doing to us. And the Bible says that a house divided cannot stand. So folks, what's been happening since the fake election that we had in 2020 was the people who are on our side, who are helping us save this world, have intentionally been dripping information out, opening people's eyes, because if they had given us the truth at that time, we'd have had civil war. And we can't tolerate that. Now, here's something very important, folks. This is a strategy that they have used forever. In the colonial period, which lasted some 300 years, they went around and colonized the world. Then they stole all the natural resources from those colonies and kept those people in servitude. They didn't give them the education system they needed. They didn't give them the infrastructure. They basically were dependent on the crown to mine their resources, to steal them, and to leave the nation in poverty. Africa is going to be crucial to peace on this planet. Africa has more natural resources than any other continent, and what they have done is divided it intentionally. When they gave Africa its independence, they said, well, you're not really going to get your freedom. It's just going to look like it on paper. They divided Africa up into 57 intentionally dysfunctional nations. No nation large enough to be a leader. No nation large enough to have economic stability. They're going to have to do what Saudi Arabia did. Stand up and say, folks, listen to us. We have power that you don't realize. You want our gold, our oil, and our cornucopia of natural resources. You're going to give us national security. You're going to give us infrastructure. You're going to give us technology. You're going to give us healthcare. You're going to give us education. You're going to give us all the things that a first world country has. So if we don't fix the problems in South America and Africa, it's going to come back and it's going to cause the world major problems. So we have to, as Christians and as Americans, we have to stand up and see to it that every continent and every nation is treated fairly. So this takes us, now we're getting into the good news here, folks. Here's how they control us, and we need to understand this because that power is about to shift to us. What they do is they take their money and they buy power, and they create community organizing groups. And what they do with those is they push up, trying to raise some kind of cultural thing. The best example I could give, because it's on people's minds, is what Obama did when he made it possible for gays to marry one another. So basically what they did is that the transsexual community had been lobbying for years with groups from the bottom up, got no traction. So Obama comes in and he adopts that same policy, and the media pushes the narrative. So they push up from the bottom until they can say through the media, this is the will of the people, that we have the ability to have people get married, whether they're, a man and a woman or two men or two women or whatever. And the government from the top pushes down. We're going to get control of those organizations. The Black Lives Matters, the SCIU, the Greenpeace movements are going to go away. We are going to have a transfer of wealth that's going to allow us to come from the bottom up, creating those community organizations that change our government, and from the top down, when the shadow government is removed and all of those politicians that have been bought and paid for are removed, we are going to now step into the position that they were in, and we have to be able to steward that, which means we have to understand what's going on. So that is crucial, folks. That's where we need to be, where we understand what they're doing, and we can take that mantle and we can assume it ourselves. So here's my prediction. I predict that this is what's about to happen. I predict that once the economy collapses, whistleblowers are going to come out of the woodwork from everywhere, and people have no idea. The things that I'm telling you here are just the tip of the iceberg. When they find out what they've done to us, how they've enslaved us, how they've kept us in poverty, how the number of people that they've killed, the wars that every war we've had has been based on a false flag event. They kill 2,000 or 3,000 people to create an outcry for a war that then kills 15, 20, 30 million people. So that's where we're at today, folks. Look at what's happening in Ukraine and look at what's happening in Israel and understand their false flag events. They're events designed to take us into World War III, because that's how they think they're going to take us into enough chaos to win. But look at this next slide. A new beginning for mankind. Every end is a new beginning. The chains of slavery are being broken and freedom is at hand. So where does that take us? What do we do? We're going to move from globalization to deglobalization. And what does that do? So basically, they control us when we're in a state of globalization, because they can interrupt the supply chain. They can cause shortages. They can drive prices up. They can make availability a problem, an issue. So look at what happened in COVID. You couldn't get a car or an iPhone for over a year. So basically, all that's going to change, and they're going to lose their control, and we're going to go away from a fiat system to a commodity-based system, and that means gold, means silver, means platinum, but it also means all of our agricultural products. It means every mineral in the world. It means the basis of all wealth in God's kingdom is going to be money. So they can't control that. They can't manipulate it. They can't cause boom-bust cycles. They can't control the stock market because those commodities are real and tangible, and they have intrinsic value. And so we're going to move into an economic system that does what? Takes their control away, and it puts it in our hands, and it gives us what? Stability. We won't have these, oh, wait a minute, folks, today the stock market collapsed. It won't happen. It's totally different. So here's a kind of wrapping up, here's a synopsis of what this is going to look like, what deglobalization will look like as control of the supply chain is stripped from China, their economy collapses. As control of the world's reserve currency slips from America, our economy collapses. So basically, the total global financial system collapses. But China will never come back as a world power. They'll come back only as a regional power. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that we covered in other shows. Mm-hmm. But America is uniquely positioned to step in, fill that vacuum that's created by the collapse of China, and restore the global economy, but do it for the white hats, for God, for Christianity, not for the evil. So now we move on, and you need to understand, well, how is America going to do that? Obama said to Trump, well, what are you going to do? Wave a magic wand? Well, kind of. It all comes down to one simple thing. If you know the Enemies Playbook, you got the magic wand. So here's what's going to happen. It's 4 or 5 simple things. We're going to help the world retool. As manufacturing leaves China, we're going to retool. And what are we going to do? China's products were designed to be intentionally obsoleted. A year after you bought them, you're out buying them again and over and over and over again. What does that create? That creates a resource sustainability issue. So we're going to retool, make products that are designed to last, hopefully, a lifetime, that are reusable, that are repairable, and look at what that's going to do to our resource consumption. So that goes right into the false narrative of climate change. Boom, gone. And then what are they going to do next? We will assist the world, the third world nations, to become first world nations. So that's going to take away the pressure to create future wars. And then America will fill the vacuum created when China collapses. And how will we do that? Well, there's very simple things. We are the technological leader of the world, particularly in AI. And why is that important? Because with AI, you have an edge on research and development. With AI, you can develop things infinitesimally faster than you can with the human mind. So basically, we're going to be able to innovate and to bring back an economy that's going to be strong and vibrant, and we're going to do it because we're technological leaders. And America is the only nation that has what? Global reach. So we're going to be able to fill that vacuum and restore the stability to the world. And this computer keeps not wanting to do. Now, I want to take you back because the things I'm saying, oh, Larry, Ballard, who are you? Who are you to tell us all this stuff? Well, first of all, I'm getting it from God. And secondly, I'm getting it from history. And God says, I never do anything unless I tell my prophets. And I never do anything unless I leave you a foreshadow that you can go back to and find the footprints in the sand. So what this slide is in the background, it's a piece of concrete. And if you look, you can see footprints. So we're going to go back and see the footprints that told us what was coming. So this was the dark day that held the promise of a better tomorrow. What was it? The assassination of Kennedy. Why did they kill him? Because he was coming against their global financial system and going to get us off the central banking system and have a silver-based system. And he was going to create a new economic system, not completely new, but to take us back to the system that America had when it was founded. It's called the National Economic Security and Recovery Act, and they call it NASARA. These are the essential components of it, folks. And this is real. It's been out there since Kennedy's assassination. And now, with everything that's happening, it's about to be activated. Here's what it's going to do. The Fed and IRS are going to be dissolved. They're illegal. 6 Supreme Court cases said that our Constitution did not give the government the right to tax a man's labor. Period. It's unconstitutional. And gold commodity-backed currency is going to be implemented so they can't control the financial system. We're going to have illegal debt forgiven. In other words, usury was illegal. But when they went in with the system that they went in, where they had revolving credit, they basically put us into a debt system. And with the supercomputers that we have, the quantum computers, they're going to be able to calculate the money that they've stolen from us. And in some way that I don't quite understand, that is going to be reimbursed in some fashion back to us. And so the next thing they're going to do is they're going to get rid of federal income tax completely. And we're going to have what we had in the beginning, a tax system that's so simple. Trump said, you may have to fill your income tax out on a card. How are you going to do that? All we had in the beginning was a sales tax. We're going to have a 14% sales tax, period. Folks, I live in Branson, and it's got higher tax than most places because it's a vacation center, but I already pay 10%. By the time I figure my federal income tax and all the other taxes, I'm paying probably 50% of my income to the government. Now we're going to pay 14%. Think about how much of a better standard of living you're going to have under this system that was the foreshadow that God put into place. And then we're going to reinstate our Constitution. So what am I talking about there? We go all the way back to 1871. And in 1871, they passed a law unconstitutionally that took a 10 square mile area and created the District of Columbia. And that District of Columbia was dubbed the corporation. And they sunsetted our Constitution and put us under a corporate constitution, which, as I said, only had one responsibility: maximize the fiduciary return to their stockholders. And they had the same thing that happened in the city of London and the same thing that happened in the Vatican. Those are the three control centers for the global financial elite. To be wiped out, folks, totally wiped out. And then they have over 6,000 patents that are going to be released. And one of them is crucial. We have multiple patents that will allow us to desalinize the oceans and fill our drying aquifers and lakes and rivers and prevent the famine that they plan on having. They plan on allowing those aquifers to dry up and allowing our agricultural production to plummet and starve a major portion of the world to death. That's not going to happen, folks. And guess what? I'm a little over 21, and I'm, I guess, what you call a senior citizen. So there's good news for you guys out there that are close to my age. They're going to increase the benefits to us senior citizens so that we can have respect and we can pay our bills and not have to worry about, are we going to buy our medicine and pay our mortgages or whatever.
That's about time, Larry.
Okay. So basically require, the last thing, whoops, I just lost my slide, whatever. I got to go back. I apologize, folks. I got a little carried away with my finger here. So the last bullet point on there is requires a stand down of all the military. So if you want to participate in this system, that means every nation in the world has to stop funding terrorism. We can end it tomorrow. Where do you think these third world countries get hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, even trillions of dollars to fight these wars? It comes from the black hats. It comes from secret funds from what? The first world nations. So they're going to have to get together and say, nope, we're not going to do that anymore. Now, I want to take you back and give you some more good news. This is not based upon theory. This is based on reality. So there was a period of time of 34 years where America instantaneously jumped as the leader of the world. And how do they do it? They supplanted England. They had a 300-year head start because they did something amazing. They created a system that equalized and elevated the condition of all mankind. It was called the American economic system. And here's what Lincoln had to say about it. It was the only system ever devised, the tendency of which was that of elevating while equalizing the condition of man throughout the world. Now, how in the heck did they do that? And it was very simple. The slavery system that was inflicted on us by Britain was based upon controlling our wages, on stifling ingenuity, and on hoarding resources. And basically that's slavery without chains. So what did the American system do? It said, you know what? We're going to make it too expensive for Americans to buy British goods. We're going to impose up to a 50% tariff. So what did that do? That made us put our thinking caps on, and we innovated the American Revolution. We built the transcontinental railroad system. We shifted it over to Europe. And here's what happened. All of the nation that innovated, us, was raised economically, but all the nations that adopted those innovations were also lifted economically. And we had a condition where the condition of the entire world was equalizing and elevating. And what was that ultimately going to do? Take away the cause for all wars, because all wars are caused because of disparity between one group that has and another group that hasn't. And so basically, this is all good news, folks. We're basically moving into a period where their ability to control us is taken away from them. Bear with me.
Hey,
I think we're on the last slide, and then we can kind of do a
shall
recap.
we? Yeah.
All right. So basically, this slide, I love it. It's peace in our time. And let me ask you a question, folks. Think about this. What is the greatest power that the enemy has over us that allows them to control us? It's money. Because that's what they buy the power and influence with, that they use to create the shadow government, that they use to brainwash us, that they use to pass the draconian laws that make it possible to have a legal dictatorship. So in every instance, art of war, the greatest strength of an enemy is also his greatest weakness. So in this financial collapse, if they collapse the system and they can't get us to comply, they've lost. That's it. That's the moment of checkmate, folks. So we have to be ready to stand up to that moment in time and say, we're not giving you back control of the system. We're not acquiescing. If we say no, and there's something that happened in history, another foreshadow, that is so simple. I thought I had that slide on here, and I don't. So I'm just going to tell you about it. Basically, where we fought a civil war, I mean, not a civil war, a revolutionary war, there was another major nation that got its freedom, and it did it in a way that actually America is moving right now. It was India. And they rallied around a man, Mahatma Gandhi, who was a lawyer and a spiritual leader. And he sat down and fasted and said, folks, here's what I want you to do. I want you to break the economic bank of England. And that's what we're talking about here, is breaking the economic bank of the elite, taking their control of money away. Here's how we're going to do it. He says, we are many, they are few. They have no control other than the control we give them. So we're going to have rolling strikes. We're going to boycott their economic system completely. We are going to drive them into other economic shambles. And they did. And they did it peacefully. Not one shot was fired. And Sun Tzu says the greatest accomplishment of war is if you can win a war without firing a single shot. And India did it. And it gives us the foreshadow of what we need to do, folks. We need to stand up and recognize that they don't have one iota of power unless we give it to them. And if you look around the world and you can find the real news, you'll find that there are protests happening in every major nation in the world. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people are standing up. Why isn't it happening in America? Because they scared us to death with what they did on January 6th, and because we're not hurting bad enough. But when this financial collapse comes down, we're going to get the big hurt, because it's going to hit our pocketbooks, and we're not going to be able to buy food, and we're going to be scared to death. So at that moment in time, folks, is when we stand up and we win. At that critical moment, if we say nope, we refuse to comply, we refuse to submit, we will crush them, just like India crushed them. And India got their independence peacefully by breaking the economic bank. So my prediction, go back to what I said, is as this comes down, we're going to get a plethora of truth. And just think about what's happened in the last couple of years. We get the slightest inkling of what Facebook did, 50% drop in the stock. Disney comes out and we see how they're subliminally conditioning our children and driving into pedophilia and so forth. Their stock plummets. And CNN, they give us the fake news that Trump now signals to us what it is so we can see it. And their viewership's dropped almost 90%. Folks, we have got virtually none of the truth, just little drips. When we come out as it is planned, the only reason we don't have the truth and the whole truth now is because if it had been disclosed before, we'd have had civil war. So now they're going to drop it at the right time when the financial collapse is coming, and we're going to see what's happened, and it's going to open our eyes like you can't even imagine. As God showed me way back in 68, the truth will set my people free. When we see that, we're going to stand up, and we're going to unite, and a nation that is united is invincible. They have lost their control at that point. So I predict that we're going to get a deluge of truth. It's going to cause entire governments to fall. It's going to entire blue chip corporations by the dozens and hundreds to fall. And when that happens, the transfer of wealth is going to come from the wicked to the righteous. And here's what we got to do, folks. We've got to come in and take over those community organizing groups and come back and get our control back from the bottom up. We've got to get rid of all those politicians that, guess what, are in their offices illegally because they were put in under the corporation. So my prediction is that probably 90% of all the politicians in Washington are going to be removed. So we get power at the top, we get power at the bottom, we take over the CNNs and the Foxes of the world, we get the media mouthpiece, we get the truth will set us free, we organize from the bottom, we push down from the top, and we get our government back, and we get freedom and prosperity, and then we share that with the world and equalize and elevate the condition of all mankind, and we reach out to Africa and to South America and say, we are going to give you the infrastructure you need, the technology you need, the manufacturing you need, and we're not going to charge you interest. We're going to give you interest-free loans, and we're going to collaborate with you to make you a first world country so that every nation in the world will participate in prosperity, and it will be peace in our time. And that's basically what's coming, folks. That's the good news, and that's coming directly from the source that I go to, the big guy upstairs.
So you know what? For everyone this is actually scary but awesome. I mean, it's one of those things where it's a paradox. It's scary hearing all these things that we're going to be against and facing, but very awesome to know that God is in control. He's the commander in chief. He's the guy that has the playbook. He creates our playbook. Mm-hmm. And so if we follow that playbook, then we're going to win. So very fascinating. Very quickly, we're going to run out of time, but I want to pay praise to a few presidents. We had President Reagan, mm-hmm. we had President Kennedy, he was assassinated, mm-hmm. and then we had President Trump. Those are about the only three presidents in our country, both Republicans and Democrats, that didn't drink the Kool-Aid of the enemy. I think people need to listen to that. We have got to get together, work together. Please work together for our country. We'll be back next Wednesday in another great show. Please share this.
Thank you.